Okay, we are live, Jacob.
All right.
So yeah, as we start this interview, I just would like you to, kind of, tell how both of us got in touch because, you were in a different part of the world and somehow God providentially brought us together. I think it was a comment that you put up on one of the videos that was talking about the Sara's movie, and that's how we got in touch, isn't it, Jacob?
That's correct. Yeah. So you had posted a an interview with a couple. I
Yes,
forget their names actually.
Elvis and Priya.
Um, yes, correct. And my sister had watched that, and she had sent me comments. Well, she didn't send me comments. She sent me the video to watch.
Yeah.
So I watched it, and I read some of the comments, and I responded to some of the comments, and
And
then
then
um, yeah, I'd also kind of posted a link to my blog, in which I'd commented on the movie myself, and
yes.
then yeah, you basically got in touch with me, and then yeah, that's where.
Yeah, a lot of people are tuning in, Jacob. So I would like to tell them that after 45 minutes or 1 hour of the interview, we would like to take questions, especially on the topic of pro-life and anything to do with abortion. So please feel free to leave your comments so that we can comment on it. So yeah, so could you introduce yourself, Jacob, to everybody who's watching this video?
Okay, I'm Jacob Devasia. I'm from Kerala in India, around 35 years old, 36 years old. Yeah, I'm Catholic. I was born and brought up Catholic. I wasn't very faithfully Catholic, if you can put it that way, until I was around 23 years old, just following the motions. Yeah, and I kind of, had an experience with Jesus and started taking the faith very seriously after that.
Mm,
Yeah, and then I'm engineer by profession.
mm,
I work in South Africa.
mm.
And yeah, so I do engineering, and on the side after that, when I have some time, I also blog a bit.
And
I'm
anybody.
married.
Yes, anybody who's interested in the
Go
topic of
ahead, go ahead.
pro-life, I would like to tell them that they should really read your blog. So it's God Saves. We'll also put the link in the description. So I mean, so when did you have your personal encounter, Jacob, or was it a slow process of coming close to God?
No, it was actually it happened overnight. I was just sitting in my bedroom. I got a talk from a friend, a talk by Christopher West.
Yeah.
Um, the name of the talk was The Battle for Sexual Purity. Yeah, that is the name of the talk.
Mm,
And I don't even know how I got it, why I got it, because it wasn't something I was even interested in or something. I just got it and I started listening to it. It's about a 3 hour talk.
mm,
And it literally just it changed my life. Yeah, because he talks about his journey, the things he struggled with, how he came to Christ, and I could identify very closely with that. And yeah, that basically changed my mind. It changed my outlook on, you know, man. Who man is, who
mm,
woman is. What's the purpose of our life.
mm,
The fact that Jesus is real. He's not a historical figure that existed 2,000 years ago. He's still alive.
mm,
He is God, and
mm.
he wants to have a relationship with us.
Yes.
So
Amazing.
yeah.
And so today we are going to talk about we kind of implicitly commenting on the movie Sara's Malayalam movie which came up, and it's created an uproar. Some are for it, some are against it, and stuff like that. So before we discuss the points that you have mentioned in your blog, Jacob, I just would like you to share your personal journey with being pro-life and how you stood for life in your personal life. Could you share that?
Yeah. So I think like one of the earliest memories I had of this whole pro-life issue, like because nobody taught me this. But growing up, there was somebody who I was very close with who had an abortion,
Mm,
and they were talking about it, and it's something that I was very young at the time,
mm,
and it shocked me the way they were talking about it because I know they were just talking about it as though it's not a human life,
mm,
as though it's just something else.
mm.
And I hadn't been educated. I was like
What? How
I don't know,
old were
12 year
you?
old, probably 13, somewhere there,
Mm,
13, 14, somewhere there. And it troubled me because I was like, aren't we talking about a human being? But everybody's talking about killing a human being as though it's just one of those things that we do. It's not a big deal. And that shocked me, although I kept silent. I never told anybody about it, but it kind of stuck in my mind. So I think that question that was in my mind at a very young age, I guess. And although I didn't know where to go for answers or anything, but it was there. And then soon after I got married, I also had a personal experience related to abortion, where I was married, and then my wife and I had been dating for a while before we got married, and we got married, and soon after that my wife fell pregnant. So she was still in India at this point in time, and I was in South Africa, and I was very happy about it. My wife was a bit shocked that she was pregnant. She wasn't expecting that, She was probably like 24 years old. She just turned 24 at that point in time. She was kind of looking into, your whole romantic time you have soon after marriage, things like that. So getting pregnant very quickly for her was a shock. For me, I was over the moon. But soon after that, about a month after that, my wife called me and said, you know what, I've been getting rashes all over my body. And I said, okay, I don't know what that is. But they basically went to the doctor. And the doctor said, okay, you know what, you had rubella. And I was like, okay, rubella, what's rubella? I have no idea. So we Googled it, kind of found out, okay, what's rubella? Okay. And then so, okay, it's not really an issue for my wife, but it's possibly quite an issue for the child, because the child, according to the information that's available on the internet, had a chance that the child would be physically deformed or physically disabled or mentally disabled. So that basically was very stressful. So my wife went with family and everyone in India to a number of doctors, because I was still in South Africa at this point, and consulted, and they also told her pretty much the same thing. Look, the child is, they kind of put it as though the child will be disabled mentally and physically, not that it has a probability, although the fact is there's only a probability, it's not certain. So based on all the advice from the doctors, everybody was saying we must abort the child. And I said, no, that's not acceptable. We can't abort the child. It's a human being. It's a human life. It's my child. We can't, choose to kill it, even if it was certain that the child will be born. We are not in that position to decide. We are not God. So basically, kind of push came to shove, and then I said, okay, look, let me come to India. So I took leave. I went back to India, stayed with my wife, visited more doctors, except one doctor who was also a nun. Everyone else said about the child. And it was actually like the doctors did not seem to even take it seriously at all. I specifically remember one doctor that we went to. He was the most famous doctor in the area. We went into his consulting rooms. He took a maximum of 5 minutes. It felt more like 2 minutes away. It wasn't even like any kind of consideration for the child. It's like, these are the child will probably, there's a chance that he'll have these disabilities. So probably, you should abort the child. Think about it and let me know. And I was very shocked and angry at the same time about it. But anyway. So there was a lot of pressure in the family during that time to abort the child. There's very little support to keep the child. But I think after a while it became evident that, there is no way that the child is going to be aborted. It's just not going to happen. And then after that, there was a change of heart. I think, once you took that whole abortion issue off the table, so to speak, everybody actually accepted it. And I think, that whole pressure and the negative thinking that, the child is going to be disabled kind of went away, and people started hoping, okay, the child may be disabled. That is a possibility, but there's also a good possibility that
it might not.
Nothing will happen to the child. The child will be perfectly healthy. So we moved down to South Africa after a few months. I think around 4 months into my marriage. My wife was here with me, and then we were happy. We were very happy. We were looking forward to the child being born. Preparing for that. Although at the back of the mind, obviously there was the thing that, okay, let's hope that nothing happens to the child. And we went for a specialist scan. Where those 3D scans and stuff. Where normally there's a 2D scan and there's also a 3D scan. So we went for the 3D scan to a specialist, and he started scanning, and the first thing he tells us is the child is dead.
Wow.
And I was like, what? Like, I didn't ask him, but in my mind the question was, are you joking? Like, by the time I had actually processed that, my wife was already crying. She was like sobbing there, sitting in the doctor's rooms. It took a while for me to actually register that it's not like a dream, or he's not joking. This is actually real. And yeah, basically we were heartbroken. The doctor told us, it's been a month since the child passed away. The child is probably rotting in a womb. She's going to get infected. You need to get the child out as fast as possible. So we went to our gynecologist, told him what had happened. He said, yeah, we need to get the child out as soon as possible. I didn't have the money because it's quite expensive. Even to get your wife admitted to hospital, you need to first pay and then you get admitted. But my mother actually sent me the money. We got her for the next day. The operation was scheduled. Well, the doctor asked us, do you want to have a normal delivery or do you want to have like a mini C's? Because the child was quite big. I think it was 4 to 5 months old at that point in time. Then we had a mini Caesar. My mother flew down, and I asked them, what are you going to do with the baby? They said, I will just discard it to the medical waste. And I was like, no, that's a human being. How can you throw a human being away as though they're waste? That doesn't make sense. I said, I want to have the baby, and please show me the baby after the operation. And I don't know, it seemed to be a first request for them, because they were like, are you sure you want to do that? I don't think that's a good idea. And I said, no, I do want to see my baby. So my wife was in the operation theater. They removed the baby. I was outside with my mom and my brother. And they brought the baby out on a small surgical trolley, covered in a small piece of cloth. And then the nurse brought it. We removed the cloth to see the baby. And my mother and my brother, something that I'll never forget, they couldn't take it, and they were just crying. So I wasn't, funny enough. I don't know. I think what hit me is, I think maybe they never realized until that point that,
yes,
it's actually a baby inside here, because everybody talks about it as a clump of cells, or, they use any description except the fact that, it's a baby. And that's the culture we've been brought up in. So yeah, anyway, they saw the baby. It was, I don't know, a special moment, I guess, to get to see your baby. I took some photos and stuff. And then basically we had the baby cremated a few days later, and his ashes placed in the garden of remembrance at the church. My kids I've been blessed to have 2 kids after that. My kids also know of him, of our first son. We remember the day of his passing every year. Pray for him, and the most, like, one of the things is when we were pregnant, just the last thing around this is, it was a young boy, and I was deciding on names very early on, quite weirdly, and me and my wife agreed on, we're going to call him Daniel, and there's no history of anybody in our family with Daniel, but we named him Daniel. And why I say that, there's 2 significances for it, right? Because when you look at Daniel, he was in the lion's den, with a number of lions around him, supposedly to take his life. And I think my son was also pretty much in the situation. And when we actually checked his name, the meaning of his name, because we didn't know what the meaning was, the name Daniel means God is my judge. That's what Daniel means. And I thought, the name must have come from God, because given the situation we were in, what it told me was none of us are a judge of the child's life. We can't say, if the child must live or if the child must die. God alone can judge that. Yeah.
And when you came to know about the possibility of the child being disabled or physically or mentally, did it not shake you? It would have been difficult, right, Jacob? I'm putting myself in that situation. When you hear that, it is difficult. It's not a very easy decision, right?
No, it's extremely difficult, because obviously all of us want the best for our children. We don't want them to struggle, although struggle is inevitable in life, but we don't want them to struggle as much as we can do that. We want them to, make the best of their life. And being physically and mentally disabled, severely impacts them. But I think in my mind it was, yes, all of this is there, but it doesn't justify killing the child. Nothing can justify killing the child. I don't have the authority to make that decision.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a very touching experience that you've had, right? And I know for you it would have been a very strong spiritual experience too, isn't it? Because you had to depend on God, not only to have the child have a safe delivery without any disability. At the same time, it was also where you took a stand for God, isn't it? Against all pressures that you had to face. So it would have been a very strong spiritual experience. Was it like that for you?
It was like, at that point in my life, it was, you're living day to day, right? And something I learned during that time is that we always kind of think that, when you go to bed, we need to have some energy left in us. But during that point in time, it was so draining that what I learned at that point in time is that you don't have to have residual energy left in you by the time you go to bed. You just need to be able to make it until that point. And if you crash after that, it's fine. So yeah, it was just taking it day to day at that point in time. Yeah.
Is there one thing that you learned spiritually from that experience, Jacob?
I think like the biggest thing that I learned is that, it's not that you don't feel the urge to take things into your hands. Because when the pressure was so great,
yes.
Right? There was one moment at which I also thought, why don't I just go ahead with the abortion? It would end everything, and we don't have any of this trouble or possible trouble going forward, if the child is disabled. So that temptation did come up in my life. And I think the biggest thing I learned there is, as much as that may seem to be the case, it's not the case. Guilt is going to come and hit you, right? You can't just get it over and done with. It doesn't work that way. And the way to go forward, I realize, is that it's just to do what you know to be right, irrespective of how you feel about it.
Yes.
Because although I felt like that, I just decided, no, I can't do this, and things got better very soon after that.
Yes, amazing. Ever since we spoke, right, Jacob, I've always constantly putting myself in that situation, and I don't think so I would have had the strength that you had in making sure that you did not act God in that situation. As you rightly said, that we do not have the right to decide who is going to live and who is going to die. That is only God is the author of life and death, isn't it?
That's correct. And it's not that the fact that I had the strength, it's not like I was, especially strong or anything like that. I think what it comes down to is grace, because grace is, like what the church teaches, is it's the life of God. and when you try to be faithful to him, with
Yes.
all your imperfections,
Yes.
his grace, like St. Paul says, the grace is made perfect in weakness.
Hmm. Yes,
My strength
absolutely.
is made perfect in weakness.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and also it was a journey for your wife too, because she was going through all this, in her, because inside her body, she was carrying through. How for her, how was it, and how did you support her in that journey?
It was very difficult for her because first of all, she had morning sickness and she was, vomiting quite a lot, and she had lost a lot of weight.
Mm.
And it was also very traumatic for her because she's not as strong a character as I am. She's more, very caring, yeah, kind of an easygoing character. So I think she felt like the load is a bit more than she could actually take.
Mm.
So I think how I supported her is, the fact that, I took leave, I went up there, I stayed with her, although I was just on leave for my marriage, 2 months ago. But yeah, and then, I was there with her, I wasn't sitting somewhere separate and just telling her to deal with it.
Yes.
And then I stayed with her for a month there. I flew down back to South Africa because that's all the leave I could get. And then, by God's grace, she got a visa and she was here in another 2 weeks. And then, yeah, we stayed together, helped her where I could.
Mm, amazing. So yeah, so moving into the interview, Jacob. So we are going to discuss the 3 points which you beautifully mentioned in your blog. So before that, I would just like to give a disclaimer. So in this interview, we are assuming that all of you are watching this interview accept that the child in the womb is a human life, because without that assumption, then the whole discussion becomes meaningless. So, and the second disclaimer is that we are talking about abortion in the context of marriage, not outside the sacrament of marriage. Isn't that correct, Jacob? I think that would set the context for the interview, isn't it?
That's fine. Yeah. Just one something that I'd like to add is that, the fact that the child inside the womb is a human life is not an assumption, it's a fact.
Fact,
You
exactly.
know, yeah, because if it was not a human life, it would never become a human life.
Yes,
It's human life that's in its infancy and that's growing.
absolutely.
And I think that's where people get confused as well, when these terms like fetus and embryo,
Mm.
people tend to assume that that kind of represents some type of a different being.
Mm.
And it's not a different being, it's a stage of development, right? It's where you go from an embryo to a fetus to an infant to a toddler to an adolescent to, a teenager to an adult,
Yes.
and it continues. So it's a stage of development, it's not a different being. But
Mm.
I think those terms tend to confuse people as though it's yeah.
And it was strategic on the part of the pro-abortion people in the 1960s when they were, trying to legalize abortion in America. The first thing they wanted to do is to make sure the terminology does not seem like, they are killing a child, which is why from, talking about child in the womb, they started saying clump of cells, fetus, so that, people get confused, and stuff like that. And they've been so successful, isn't it, Jacob? They got abortion
That,
legalized in America, and after that, the whole thing has been so normalized in all over the world. Like abortion is no more considered as abortion and a murder of a child.
yeah, even the term abortion itself, right? Because like if you just hear abortion, what does it mean? It does even that term doesn't say,
You're killing a
that
child.
it's killing a child, because they talk about the pregnancy, they don't talk about the child, right? But
Yes.
what's pregnancy? Pregnancy is the state of actually having a child growing
Yes.
inside of you.
Yeah.
So I agree with you completely because everything's about language, right? Because
Yes.
they fiddle with language because language influences the way you think. So
Yes.
if they successfully able to change language, you think about it in a way that's more favorable towards actually um,
Their side of the argument.
pushing facts. Joseph?
Yeah, there was some lack of connection. The connection became. Are you able to hear me now, Jacob? Are you able to hear me, Jacob?
Yes, I can.
You can hear me?
I can hear you, Joseph.
Yeah,
Yes, I can.
yes, I think there was a lag. There was for a period of time there was a poor connection. So yes, so going to into the first point of what we want to discuss in that movie, Sarah's movie, the one of the argument that the doctor makes is it's better not to be a parent than being a bad parent. So as note in your blog, you say once you get married, you're already a parent because that is a vow that you take before the altar of God, isn't it?
Once you fall pregnant, you are already a parent.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So that's correct because when you're pregnant, right? There's already a baby growing inside of you. That's the condition of pregnancy, right? And again, that statement of it's better not to be a parent than be a bad parent is again, fiddling around with words,
Yes.
right? Because who doesn't agree with that statement that it's better not to be a parent than be a bad parent?
Mm.
The problem with it, right, is that again, it's to kill your child than to be a bad parent, right? Because nobody's forcing anybody to be a parent. Nobody's forcing anyone to get married. No one's forcing anybody to fall pregnant, right? It's not like somebody's coercing a woman to be pregnant, right? It's something that consensually happens in a marriage, where they engage in, sexual intimacy, and the natural outpouring of which is a child, right? And the fact is, once you fall pregnant, you can't not be a parent because you already have your child growing inside of you. What you can do only is you can either take care of the child as you ought to if you're a very good person, right? Or you can actually kill the child. But killing the child doesn't make you not a parent anymore. It makes you somebody who actually killed your child.
Yes.
So it doesn't make you an active parent, but you are still a parent. Like I'm a parent of 3 children, right? One of them has passed away, but I'm still the child of 3 parents.
And not. Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I was saying, like, if in our culture, this argument that, it's better to not to be a parent than be a bad parent. Like, if you think that you're not ready to be a parent, what makes you think that you're ready for marriage? Because being a parent is a natural consequence of you getting married, isn't it?
That's correct. Actually, that's something else that people don't understand is that the whole purpose of marriage, right, is to protect a child, right? People think of marriage as being some sort of validation of the feelings that 2 adults have for each other, right? That's not what marriage is, right? If you have a marriage certificate, that doesn't mean that you love each other, right? You could kind of hate each other and be wanting to kill each other even if you have a marriage certificate.
Yes.
So the state has no business telling you that, the whole intent of marriage as a legal contract is to protect the child because that relationship the 2 adults have, it's ordered towards, the natural outpouring of it is a child. And unless that is regulated by laws, you risk the whole fact that the child is going to be uncared for.
Yes.
So the relationship is regulated in order to take care of the small defenseless human being who comes into the world as a result of that relationship, that intimate relationship. And from a Catholic perspective, sorry, that's kind of, legalistic.
Yeah.
From a Catholic perspective, you're 100% right. Like one of your vows that you take at marriage is to be open to life,
Yes.
right? Because that's one of the fundamental purposes of marriage. It's both unitive as well as it's supposed to be fruitful. So it's supposed to bring both of you together, and it's supposed to result in children.
Yes. Jacob, there is a little bit of a connection problem that I'm sensing. Is your mobile connected to the Wi-Fi?
It is connected to the Wi-Fi, yeah.
Okay, so it's up and down. Let's go ahead. If it's really bad, then I will intimate you. But right now it's okay.
Okay.
Uh, so every 2 minutes it
Sorry
becomes a
about
little bit. Yeah, no problem. And also, Jacob, now you're a parent of two children. Like, from your experience, do you think like, parenting, like, can you ever be prepared to be a parent until you have a child, and then it is a, on course learning, isn't it, to be a parent? And the sacramental grace, also provides you to be a parent.
That's 100%. You can never be prepared. How can you? It's like you're saying, are you prepared going into to work? Are you prepared to get married? In the first place.
Mm. Yes.
It's something that as an adult. That's why you don't have kids. Getting married. You can't get married at 12 years old because you don't have the maturity to do that, right?
Mm.
But part of the process of growing up, to say that you're an adult is basically to say that you can take on responsibility, right?
Mm.
And that's why only adults can get married. And everything in life, whether it's a job, whether it's getting married, whether it's having kids, everything is the adoption of responsibility, right? And like you said, you learn. It's something momentous, and you can never be ready, right? Even if you were to postpone it until you're 40, right? You wouldn't be ready
Yes.
to have a kid. You learn as you go.
And was it that the same case, like once you had your second and third child, as you, you were learning as you were, parenting them, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm still learning. I think we all learn. Even when when we become grandparents, we still be learning. It's not like that we know everything at any point in time.
And being a bad parent has nothing to do with the preparation, right? Like, a person who constantly makes a person who is really prepared and can make constant wrong choices and still will turn out to be a bad parent. So preparation in itself just not, justify or kind of assure a person being a good parent.
No, it doesn't, because what is it that stands in the way? What stands in the way of being a good parent is selfishness, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the desire to place your desires above everything else. And it's not like that goes away at any point in time. That's always there in your life. And the more you fight against it, the less it becomes. But it's not like, you're suddenly going to become a saint and then only you're going to have a child, That's not how it works for most people.
And Bishop Barron, one of my spiritual heroes, he says that God blesses, like when a child comes into the family, the moment child comes into the family, the child becomes the focus. So it draws both the man and the women from their selfishness, and now they are now they have to take care of another human being. They have to love another human being, be there for another human being. So it draws you out of yourself, and now you start giving, and the more you give, the more you increase as a human. So Pope John Paul II says you increase in the measure that you give it away. So marriage makes that possible, because the love that is shared between the husband and wife, in 9 months has to be given a name, and you have to start caring as a man and a woman. So it makes you a better when a child comes into your life, isn't it, Jacob?
Yeah, definitely. Just like you're getting married, when you get married, it's not long about you, but it's about you and your wife, And when you have a child, it's about you, your wife, and your child. And when you have another child, it's about all of you. So it's like, you increasing your sphere of responsibility, and at the same time, you're increasing your sphere of love, right? Because it's not only
Exactly.
responsibility, it's
Yes.
responsibility, love, intimacy, affection, all of those kind of things. But it's never talked about in that way. It's always talked about as though it's some sort of burden, right? Which is not true, right? There is an aspect of responsibility to it, definitely, but there's also a huge amount of joy in it, right? Which nobody actually talks about.
Like in our careers, just because we are given more responsibilities, we wouldn't say, oh, I'm not going to do this, I'm not prepared, stuff like that, right? Because we would come out of ourselves, we will try to do it and make make ourselves better and really try to achieve and be good in the responsibility that is given to us. But only in the context of marriage and childbearing, we all want to shrug off the responsibility and say, "Oh, I can't do this, I can't do that." It's creating a very low standard for people who are getting married. Like, the culture is constantly telling women, if you're concentrating on your career, you can't do this. If you're a mother, you can't concentrate on your career. But we as humans are much more capable of being multidimensional and be efficient in many aspects of our life. And when a woman says, I can be only concentrate on career, she's actually limiting herself, her potential, isn't it, Jacob?
Yeah, that's correct, right? And just think about, like, if you're only working on your career, right? How boring is that going to be? It's like you get up in the morning, right? Like, I don't know if you're considering marriage, but if you get up in the morning and you just work and you work until you sleep, and then you wake up in the morning and you work until you sleep, if that's all there is in your life, right? It's not great. Like, it's just something it's a lie, to say that career is going to satisfy you, because career actually can't satisfy you, right? Fundamentally, because human beings were not created for career, right? I think the easiest way to understand it is, okay, who dreams about going to heaven where you're working, let's say behind your laptop? That's where we all work, right? Yeah. Who dreams of, in heaven I'm going to be working for all eternity? That's great. Nobody dreams of that.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And what are you going to do? Let's say even if you don't work 18 hours a day, you come home, and then what are you going to do? You come home, just going to watch Netflix, or try to go out with your friends. How long are you going to have your friends? They all grow up, they all get into families and relationships, because human beings are drawn towards relationships, they're drawn towards love, they're drawn towards intimacy. Communion, right? And yes, that is that's what satisfies you. It's not working, it's not titles, it's nothing like that. And even with regard to that, like, whoever has a child will probably be able to relate to this, where you're sitting at work, you're so stressed out because work is stressful, right? You're so stressed out, and then maybe your spouse sends you a picture of your child, and in between the stress, you open your WhatsApp, you see the picture of the child, and it's just so beautiful. It's so beautiful. It makes you want to smile. It kind of takes your stress away. It kind of gives you energy. It gives you meaning for all the stress that you're going, for what you're doing, right? And then even when you come home, like, if you contrast the two situations where, let's say you don't have any children, you come home, right? And let's say you don't even have a spouse, right? For argument's sake, you come home, and then what do? There's nothing literally for you to do. There's no human being you can talk to, right? You just sit there and while away your life. At the same time, you come home to a family with your wife and your kids, right? And then there's so much, like when you're a toddler, you come, and then when your child is a toddler, you open the door and you see someone crawling towards you. Hey, Dad, when they're a bit older, they're like, Daddy's home, and they come and they climb on top of you. You go outside, you play football, you fight with them, you sit and, play crazy games with them. There's like just so much joy to the whole thing, right? That nobody who actually has children will tell you, what, I actually regret having this child. I wish I was stuck up in office doing my work. Nobody will tell you that, right? This lie gets sold to like 18-year-olds who don't know anything.
Yes. And
they're painted a picture that, marriage is so, having children is so much responsibility. Being at work is great. It's actually the other way around. There isn't so much joy at work. There's more responsibility at work. Here, there's less responsibility in a sense, right? And a lot more joy. So
yes, I think that was a good segue into the second point that we were planning to discuss, where the movie projects as career is the ultimate fulfillment for a woman or for a man. One of the good points, one good point that you made in that part of the blog is you said, work in itself is not for its own sake. We work because we are aspiring for something else. It's because we want to be happy, and what makes us happy? Providing for our family, for your children, and for our wife. That makes us happy, which is why we work. So work in itself does not exist for its own sake. So I think that was a very good point. So the ultimate point is work cannot give you the satisfaction that you're expecting, isn't it?
That's correct. Yes, because first of all, it's the aspect of relationships, right? Where you're built for relationships, right? Even our, the creed says, we believe in the communion of saints,
Yes.
right? Where ultimately in heaven, you're not going to exist on your own, right? You're going to exist in a communion. You're going to exist with God, and you're going to exist with all the other saints in a communion of love, where you love each other and you are loved by each other. And the second thing is, like what you said, where everything that you do is oriented towards the good of human beings, right? That's pretty much what it is. You're either working for your family to provide for your family, right? Or you're working in order to provide for other individuals in society, right? To better their lives, right? That's what 99% of human activity is oriented towards. It's not, I'm working for the sake of working. That doesn't make any sense.
Yes. Yes, that's absolutely right. And another point that you make in the blog is also like if you're going to kill a child because you want to grow up in your career, then why, following that logic, you should also kill everybody who is an hindrance in your job workplace, who are being an hindrance for you to climb the corporate ladder, right?
That's correct. It's like, because at the end of the day, we're human beings in different stages of development, right? And if you can kill the most innocent of human beings, right? Why can't you kill another human? And if you're killing them for the sake of your career, why can't you kill anyone else who is
It's an hindrance for your career.
standing in the way of your career? There's no logical argument for that, right? What is the logical argument? The only logical argument you could possibly bring up is, saying, there's different stages of development, right? So you can kill someone who's not as developed, and you can not kill someone who's fully developed, right? Okay, then does that mean that you can kill a baby who's just been born because they're not fully developed?
Yes.
Right? Does it mean you can kill a teenager, right? Does it mean you can? And what's development? Because human life, you go from, the bottom, you go to the peak, and then your life starts declining, right? Because that's what you see in the whole euthanasia, right? Where old people are not valued anymore, right? So if you take development as a criteria for what human life is valuable and what human life is not valuable, right? Then everyone's life is basically up for grabs, right? Because you could say development is not only physical development, it's mental development, it is emotional development. So somebody who's not ready to adopt responsibility, in the case of a parent who wants to adopt their child, right? You can make the argument that they're not developed because they're not ready to take responsibility, right? So now is their life up for grabs. So once you deviate from the fundamental precept that human life has inherent dignity purely because it's human life, right? That everyone's life is up for grabs for whoever has more power.
I actually missed asking you this question in that first point that we are discussing, like, the bad parent, the whole thing. Like, once the child is born and then you realize that you're not being able to be a good parent, feeding the child, taking care of the, the toddler, you wouldn't say that, because now I feel that I'm going to be a bad parent for this child, I want to kill the child after the child is born. You would not make that argument, right? So if you can't make that argument after the child is born, why would you make the argument before the child is born, when it is in the, as you rightly say, it's in the process of human development?
Yeah, correct. Because if that's the case, like anytime you realize that you're being a bad parent, right, you should be able to kill your child.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
It is illogical. And even if you think about it, people say, but look at these children who are suffering, right, at the hands of bad parents. But like, abortion has been legal in India since 1971, right? It's been how many years? 50 years, right? So there's nobody under 50 years old, right, who was forced to exist because of the fact that, abortion was illegal. So all of these kids, were welcomed into the world at a certain level. And because human selfishness never goes away, right, they were probably mistreated as they were growing up. So it's not the lack of abortion that, has resulted in these kids being mistreated. It's the fact that people have not been able to get over their selfishness.
Yes.
And what this whole abortion thing is doing is it's promoting selfishness. It's promoting further selfishness, which is basically, in killing a child. And one additional thing that I find kind of misleading about that particular statement, that it's better not to be a parent than be a bad parent, is it kind of assumes these categories of people who are good parents and are bad parents, right? And that's not true. Anybody can be a good parent and anybody can be a bad parent, right? Being a good parent is the same thing as being a good human being, right? So it's not as though you can categorize your life into different places where you say, you know what, I'm a good son, I'm a good husband, but I'm not a good father, right? If you're not a good father, you're also not a good husband, right? And you're not a good human being.
It's all interconnected.
Right? Yeah, and if you're not a good human being, right, nobody's actually going to love you, right? If you're evil, nobody's actually going to love you. Because unless you are willing to love, because why do we love people? We love people because of the goodness that we see in them, right? Manifested mostly by, like Jesus said, there's no greater love than laying down your life for a friend. So it's when you are willing to lay down your life for someone else that other people will be willing to lay down their life for you. And that's what everybody dreams about, right? When you dream about a spouse, you dream about, somebody who loves you so much that they'll be willing to lay down their life for you. But if you are not that sort of person, you're not going to attract that sort of person. If you are very narcissistic and only thinking about yourself, you're going to attract another one who's very narcissistic. So don't expect love if you're not willing to love.
So the basic point that you're trying to make is like, when you say that you're not going to be a good parent, so in that case, you're not even, it's naturally follows that you're not a good human being because you have not learned how to love and how to give. So what makes you think that, you will do that with your spouse? And what makes you think that you will, are ready for marriage? Isn't that the logical flow of things?
That's correct. Yeah, because you're only getting into a contract. Maybe you're getting into a relationship that's legal, in which you can be sexually intimate with someone, right? But it's not anything beyond that, because you're basically showing that what matters to you the most is yourself, right? It's not another human being. So, what does your vows in marriage mean? If everything exists for you.
Yes, and that is a very important point that we need to convey for all the Christian young people, Christian youth who are planning to get married. You go into marriage with an attitude to give, not with the attitude to receive. So if you're going with the attitude to give, then you give to your spouse your whole heart, mind and soul, and you also give the same to your children. Otherwise, it becomes very, very difficult. As you say, you become very selfish. And not only that, you're not going to be a good parent, you're not also going to be a good spouse. So the whole important point is your attitude to be selfless, and are you willing to give? That's the question that we all need to ask in this regard, isn't it?
Yes, because nobody wants to be in a person who's always sucking out of you, right?
Yes.
You want to be in an environment where everybody cares for each other, everybody's looking out for each other, not where everybody's trying to suck out whatever they can from other human beings.
And normally those kind of marriages become very, very difficult very, very difficult, right? If one person is very narcissistic and very selfish, and the other person gets bogged down and they don't know what to do, because it's very emotionally, physically and spiritually draining to live with a person who is very, very selfish.
Yeah, correct. And that comes out in the movie Sara, right? Because I was actually surprised to see how poorly the movie was made, right? And I'm not saying this because it promotes abortion. It is like, because I thought if they're going to sell it, they might as well package it well. But but the character Sara in there was so depressing. Like, when you look at her, as long as things are going her way, she's fine, right? She's always thinking about herself. And the moment things are not going her way, she's like so depressed and just depressed and an unpleasant person to be with. People around them are feeling so much pressure because it's not a happy environment. And who would, like, the character Sara in the movie, like, how many people would actually want to get married to that woman? Right? Nobody, right? And even if it is a man, it would be the same thing. If the guy was just thinking about himself, how many women would want to get married to him? Nobody. right? So by promoting that kind of selfishness, we're also setting men and women up for failure in terms of, their desire for relationships and
Yes.
intimacy and love, because nobody wants to be in a relationship with a narcissistic person.
And the most funny part in the movie, Jacob, is when she knows that she's pregnant, the guy's feeling to be a father and he wants to have the child, that is absolutely kind of kept aside. There's no respect given for him, his feelings, and his desire to have a child. And she completely goes bonkers and she stops even talking to him. So that is how much she is self centered, isn't it?
Yeah, and the kind of thing that hit me the most is the picture, the place immediately after that, where they've been drinking the night previously,
Yes.
and she vomits in the morning,
Uh,
and then his immediate reaction is, "Oh man, you shouldn't have been drinking
yeah.
if you're pregnant," right? He's thinking about the child,
Yeah.
and what's her response? Her response is like,
That's
"Does
what
it
you.
seem to you as though that's the most important thing on my mind?"
Yeah.
Right? Where she's like, "I don't care if this kid is damaged, right? That doesn't matter to me at all, right? All that matters to me is the fact that I want to see my name on a movie screen." And it's pathetic. I don't know. I don't want to say this, but it is pathetic, to be honest.
Yeah. And yeah. And the last point, of course, I think it's a very interesting thing that we as Christians need to understand. Just because something is legal doesn't mean that it is morally right. As quote different examples of how the Nazis were killing the Jews in Germany, and it was legal for them to kill the Jews. And slavery was legal in America, and even in India, sati was legal till the Britishers kind of put a stop on that. So just because something is legal doesn't mean it is morally wrong. And as Catholics and Christians, we are supposed to make sure that the unjust laws are overturned with our influence. We cannot just say, okay, it's legal, so what can I do? We are meant to be the salt and the light of the to the world, and we keep quiet and we don't raise our voice, and who's going to do it? Nobody's going to do it, isn't it?
That's correct. And I was actually thinking about this, in preparation. I was saying, okay, like people say, but it's legal,
Yeah.
right? There's never a full sentence. It's always like, like a part sentence, like it's a woman's choice. Choice for what, right?
Yeah.
And so when people say it's legal, I was thinking, what do they mean by it? Do they mean the fact that, okay, because it's legal, I'm going to do it, right? And if that's what they mean, then you need to ask the question, okay, so the fact that they're not doing other things is only because it's illegal, right? If those things were also legal, they would also do those things, right? So, like, what if it became legal that, like you said, you're a bad parent now, you want to kill your child, or you're not happy with your husband, you want to kill him. Now, are they going to do that just because it's legal, right? So I think it's a lousy argument, for one.
Yes.
And like you said, many things have been legal, and have been institutionalized, like you said, like slavery, Nazism, and all of that, right?
Nazis.
And it doesn't mean that they were right because they were legal. And like even if you look at the people, like in our lives, sometimes we really don't like people and we despise people. We shouldn't, necessarily be doing that. But part of the matter is when people sometimes behave so badly, we do that. We kind of say, man, come on, man. Like really, you can be much better than this, right? And those people, we find them to be deeply immoral, right? But they're not probably doing anything that's illegal, right? They're all within, like, the police are not going to come and arrest them, but they're not good people. So we can't use the example, like even in India, like adultery is legal, right? But if your spouse is, cheating on you, are you going to say, yeah, you know what? Or you're cheating on your spouse, I'm still a good human being, right? Prostitution is legal. You don't have to have a job. Not having a job is not illegal, right? So if you don't have a job, you kind of going to prostitutes. Sorry for the explicit thing. I'm just
Yes. Yeah.
kind of trying to drive home the point.
Yeah.
You're cheating on your wife. You're drunk. You're coming and vomiting all over the house. You're not going for a job. You're just like not contributing at all, and you're just making things worse, right?
And you say it's legal.
None of that. Yeah, it's legal. So does that mean you're a good human being?
Yes.
Because even with the case with adultery, I think the Supreme Court decision in India basically just said that when they made it legal, it said that you can't criminalize adultery, right? But it might be grounds for divorce, right? So the fact that something is legal doesn't make it right. You know,
And also, that would be the same thing for divorce, right? Like, divorce is legal in literally every country, but as Catholics and Christians, divorce is not okay for us, and it's not morally right according to the Catholic teaching. So nobody divorces and says, oh, I divorced because it's legal. But you have also, or you also have to submit to a much more higher authority than the state or the government, which is to God. So it is only where we have to make sure that the state, the human laws that we put together is in line with God's law. St. Thomas Aquinas says, unjust law is not a law. So, and as Christians, we have to fight to make sure an unjust law is not unjust anymore. Like even with Father Stan, right? Like, the government goes and takes all the land from the tribal people. It's just kind of an unjust law, but he fought for it. So as Christians, we cannot simply say it's legal, so it's all right. But if we know that the law is unjust, we have to fight for it and do all that we can in the political process to overturn the law and make it just.
that's correct. Yeah. Because like even if you look at like say China, our neighbor as an example, there's no political freedom over there. That's the law, right? Does that make it right?
Yes.
Doesn't make it right.
Yes.
There's other countries where you don't have freedom of religion, right? Also in China, you don't have freedom of religion. Does that make it right because it's the law? No, right? So, and I think this is something that I was actually thinking about. That when you look at law, right, people kind of assume law to be the same as being, the good or morality. And it's actually not, right? Because if it was, you wouldn't have, slavery, you wouldn't have all of those things. And at the same time, you don't want law to prescribe morality to the nth degree, right? Because otherwise, like your thought is a sin, right? Sometimes you can sin by thinking, right? Now, if the state started imposing punishments for every wrong thing that you did, your life would become intolerable.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
So the intent of the law is not to impose morality. The intent of the law is to impose, say, a minimum level of morality. That's
or
the
order.
bare minimum, right? Yeah, or order. Yeah, it's supposed to kind of protect other people from you, right?
Infringing your rights.
From
or vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah, but at the same time, it doesn't do that as well, right? And when you actually look at it, slavery and stuff, what was it? It was at the end of the day, the powerful imposing their will on the less powerful. That's what it was, right? Everything, so like, one of the catchphrases now is, we all live in a patriarchal society, right? And that was, maybe, the people, men imposing their will on women, like, with the whole issue of sati, as an example. There's also, the upper cloth movement or whatever you call it in Kerala. That's another example, right? So all of that was the law. And the law was basically whatever suited those in power, right? That was brought into the law.
Yes.
And when you apply that to the, institution of abortion now, right? It's basically like in a democracy, right? Who are the powerful, right? It's not the kings anymore. It's not something that's being imposed top down, right? The powerful people in a democracy are those people who can vote, right? It's adults.
Yes.
Right? And all abortion is basically sacrificing the rights of the weak, right? Who are the unborn, for the sake of adults to indulge in sexual pleasure, right? Without any consequence.
Yes.
So it's just a different form of how, the powerful oppress the weak.
Yes.
Right?
I
always, in that way, and it still is that way. It doesn't make it right.
Are you there, Jacob?
Yeah, I'm still here. I can
Okay.
hear you.
Yes. We missed the last line that you said. What were you saying? The last line?
Okay, so what I was saying is that, in law, the utilization of or loss of rights of the weak for the sake of those who are in power has been something of a constant.
Yes.
And it still is the case, where it is legal to kill the young for the sake of adults who want to, indulge in pleasure seeking.
Yes.
That's what it is,
Yes.
Rape and all of those are side issues. It's less than 1% of children who are
Yes.
actually aborted due to rape. More than 99% of children are aborted, mostly because people want to indulge in pleasure when they want to, with whomever they want to.
That's and Mother Teresa said, I always say whenever we talk about the issue of abortion, she said, if a mother can kill her own child in her womb, what is left for me and you to kill each other? So it's one of the most grievous sins, social evil of our time, and I think as Christians we have to fight against it and also help our non-Christian brothers and sisters to see the truth in what we are saying and to do everything that we can to be the voice for the voiceless and to protect the most innocent in our society. And I think you really have a very strong experience to talk on this issue of abortion because you had to go through it and you stood for the faith and you stood for your child, and I think that's a great example and an inspiration for all of us, Jacob. There is one comment which has come. I just want you to come. So Matthew Phillip, I think he reads your blog. He says, thanks Doc, good vibes. I don't know if you know him. Then Joyce and Joy says, thank you for sharing your good thoughts and experiences. God bless you. And Nirmal George says, Director Jude Anthony, you can't undo the movie, but you can listen to this and grow up. He says, basically it's kind of revolutionary. A lot of people say you're living in the 21st century and you're still talking about abortion as if it's not a woman's choice, right to choose. How can you say that? Stuff like that. What answer would you give for that, Jacob?
I would say complete the sentence, right?
Yeah.
A woman's right to choose what? Right? Because and that's why they say it's a woman's right to choose. Okay, what? Somebody who doesn't know, it's like, you don't want to force a woman to do something. But nobody's forcing a woman to do anything, right? It's like nobody forced a woman to, have sex with someone. Nobody forced her, to get married or whatever the case was, right? But we can't say that it's a woman's right to choose to kill a baby, right? Do we say it's a woman's right to choose, okay, what, to kill her husband? Is that fine?
Exactly.
So first complete the sentence, if you complete the sentence, you realize it's a ridiculous proposition.
I just would like to add another question to the same context that you just commented on. There is another comment. These people speaking of the right of an egg or an embryo or a fetus, but the same people cannot accept the right or choice of a woman. The right of a fully grown human is more important than the right of an unborn, unseen, not yet fully developed human. What stupidity.
Yeah, so we've spoken about this earlier, right?
Yes.
Where they talk about the fetus and the embryo and stuff. But what is a fetus and embryo? It's a stage of development, right?
Exactly.
And the development continues. It's not a different human. It's not a different being. It's a human being who's in development. So a fetus or embryo becomes a fetus, which fetus basically is, I think, Latin or Greek or something for infant, something like that. And then the child becomes a newborn, an infant, it becomes a toddler. It's not and then becomes an adolescent or whatever it is, a teenager, an adult, and then become, whatever.
Goes through the human development.
Yeah, it's all human development. And when you say you're going to, distinguish on the basis of development, right? All you're basically saying is that, okay, someone who's perfectly developed, right, is the only person who has rights. Everybody else's rights is up for, it's up to them. That means that, infants can be killed, toddlers can be killed, right? Adolescents can be killed, teenagers can be killed. Adults even who are not fully developed, right? Like if you're disabled, you can be killed, right? even if you are grown up and let's say, you're not contributing to society, you haven't developed
Yeah.
yourself to your full extent,
Yes.
right? Then your life is up for grabs. Let's say you have a low IQ, for argument's sake, right? You fully developed yourself with your IQs, let's say 80, I'm not sure, right, what the ranges are. Then somebody who's 150 says, you are fully developed, but that's not good enough, right? So where do you stop? What's a logical argument that you can have for defending any life?
Yes. And that is
Because
why.
someone who's in power,
Sorry.
so someone who's in power, right? They can say, look, I am fully developed. You guys down there who are working, right, who are just doing manual labor for argument's sake, you're not fully developed, right? Therefore, I can kill you. And that's kind of like the same logic which is kind of being used by the Nazis and stuff like that, where, Jews were seen as something less than being human.
Fully.
And that's, everywhere where, you want to marginalize or what do you call it, kill somebody, right? You start by
Dehumanizing them.
dehumanizing them. Yeah, dehumanizing them in some sense.
Yes, that's absolutely
So
true.
it's a very dangerous ideology, right? And if you go down that route, you and I and the person who commented, right, are not very far away from their rights being taken away.
That's amazing. Yes, Jacob, I think we can, just go on and on. I think we can have another 1 hour of discussion on this topic because you're so well read. You have so much knowledge in this area. Maybe we should do another interview when you have time. So yeah. So thank you for this interview, Jacob. I think is this the first time that you're sharing about the journey that you had in a public forum?
Yeah, publicly, yes, it is the first time. Yeah.
I think it'll
Thanks
be
for having me, JD.
Yes, thank you, Jacob. Still, so many people have tuned in. I think it's going to be an inspiration, and we'll see what kind of feedback that we get from this video, and then probably we can address a lot of other things in the upcoming video that we're going to do. So thank you, Jacob.
Okay.
Thank you once again. I'm going to end the live, but you stay online. Don't cut the call.
Okay.